Hello, everybody. Hopefully, I see Zachariah. Hopefully, someone can confirm that you can hear and see me. I don't think I'm having any problems. There's Quindy. So, I'll probably just get to painting, I guess. I was away last week, so nothing was seriously wrong, but I've had some interesting events. Not all right. Interesting in the context of, not being a very excitable person. So I'll probably talk about some of that. But it's the week of Thanksgiving in the United States. And before I switch over to the other camera, I just want to take a minute to say thank you to all of you who come and hang out and keep me company on Mondays. I really appreciate it. And if you have been here in the past few months, you might guess what miniature I'm going to do today. So I'll go over to the other view, get more light, and it's the pie guy. His name is Tub the Dwarf Baker. I do not recall his number right now. Hey, Sir Gambit 25. But I started him on Canadian Thanksgiving because I'm originally from Canada, and I thought I would see if I can finish him up today. That might be ambitious. I don't know. So it's funny. I was looking for pie pictures, and I have a couple of royalty-free sites that I usually look at, especially for stuff that I might show on screen here. And everybody that contributes pictures to that is very fancy in their pie making. There were no just basic, there's a crust on top of it. There were very few of those. And it was all fancy fruit ones, or where they made the pastry into look decorative, or it's just around the rim or something. They all looked very delicious, but they did not look like a traditional pie like Tub has made. And in the context of the Brinewyn setting, it's probably a meat pie, but I would assume that the area around Brinewyn has some interesting fruits or berries or whatever that you could make pie out of. I usually do it previously on, so not last week, but the week before, I was working on this, which was an alternate sepia version of this that I worked on right before Halloween, because I did not love these colors, so I went to look up a warmer sepia tone photos and came up with this recipe, which is maybe too warm now, I don't know, but somewhere in the middle. And someday I would like to finish these, but I don't think they're, I guess for the turkey, that's how they feel about Thanksgiving. Speaking of turkey, if you would rather paint a turkey than a pie, Reaper also has Smigo and Gobbins, which is just adorable. Hi, Ella, what's up? You like to interrupt on Monday afternoons? Yes, you do. Come here. Hi. We'll go back to the other camera and show everybody how cute you are. I'll even turn off the light so it doesn't go in your eyes. She's very sad today. So originally I thought that Tub was the only Reaper figure with a pie, but I was thinking about it and I'm like, I really feel like I've seen another pie one. And then it occurred to me to search for the clowns. And one of the killer clowns has a pie, but that's like a cream pie, so I didn't feel, yeah, you're stuck on my shirt and I know you don't like it. That didn't seem as Thanksgiving-y, as well as the killer clown part. So I went with Tub. Oh dear, I think the camera got way moved. Let me see where we are when I get back. I don't have a way to preview it. All right, I don't think that's too bad. Can't really square it up exactly because it's more of a perspective view. So I don't know if she's going to continue to be sad in the background. If she is, I will ask my husband to give her more treats. Perhaps she did not like the treats I gave her earlier. So yeah, I don't know if Quinny can find the killer clown that has a pie. In case anyone, because it may not be good for Thanksgiving, but I bet there are some games where that would be fun to drop in on your players. All right, so what part do I want to do next on Pie Guy? And I'm inclined to do his hair and beard and stuff because it will be hard to reach. Also, I see that I did not... Oh, I think I didn't paint his little shirt yet, so hopefully it's not just that I missed that part. His undergarment. But I'm going to do the hair next, which I grabbed some paints for that. Where did I find Bonzo? That is the killer clown. There are 2 other killer clowns and then some spectacularly creepy jesters. So I did shake most of my paint, but I forgot to shake the ones I put aside for his hair. Since the pie is going to be tan and the apron and his hat are going to be light colored and probably the rolling pin as well, I'm going to go with like more of a brunette kind of color. And so this is one of the colors from the Barrowgate box, which I think it might still be available. And this is similar to, yellow sand? Sandy yellow. Long ago, there was a color that got canceled that was kind of like there was a sand triad and the lighter color got canceled. And I was very attached to it as a way of doing highlights for a brunette hair. Zachariah M. is asking if I've noticed the newer paints being thinner in consistency, not a difference in the pigmentation, just in the actual, fast to pour. And actually, yeah, I think I have noticed that. I have not heard that there's been a change, but I feel like I have observed that also. So this black and brown is like a warm brown. It's in a triad with walnut and another color I should have grabbed, intense brown. It's possible I have intense brown for various reasons over here. I do not. We're going to fake it. But I did grab this, this is darker than intense brown, but I thought it was nice too. Because I don't want to make it like super dark. Viscosity is the correct term. That's right, Zachariah. All miniature paints, apart from, sometimes people do use 2 paints to paint miniatures, but most paints designed for painting miniatures or that people have adapted to painting miniatures are what you would call fluid consistency if you were into making acrylic paint. But there's like a range of fluid, which is, they're somewhat more viscous, but it's still going to mostly level out. And then there's like super runny, which is like the acrylic inks. And Reaper kind of right in the middle as a rule. We're going to need more of that. Mixing the highlights and whatnot. So I don't have any intel on if something has changed. Occasionally, the supplier of the raw ingredients will have changes in what's available. So the intense brown is just a little more orangey. So I might cheat. Well, not cheat. I might make my life more complicated and make up for the fact that I failed to grab the correct paint and just add a little saturation back in. Because if you do end, this is what kind of lie I like to have kind of paints in between for my middle colors instead of just mixing everything with white or a light color. Because if you just mix in white especially, but all light colors are going to do it because they're going to be mostly white, you start to lose saturation. And when people talk about chalkiness, I think sometimes that's the kind of thing that's bothering them. Is it's not necessarily that it's adding a texture or something like that, but it's, there's just so much white and a lot of the color's been taken out of it. Is my theory at any rate. I am surprised at the amount of orange that I've had to add to that. There's probably a bit of red in the intense brown as well. I haven't used it like super recently. It's not like I've memorized all the colors and can mix the matching colors from memory. Just kind of going with what I think is going to work better for that hair color. And actually, I was reading something. Every now and then, I go down a rabbit hole with costumes for historical TV shows and movies and stuff. Like I don't sew. I'm not into recreations or anything like that. But I just kind of enjoy hearing people's commentary on it for some reason. And there's this one site that I go to. It's called Frock Flicks, where they're very snarky, which is always a thing I enjoy. I mean, not when people are being mean to each other, just like movies and TV shows and whatnot, that have snarkiness. So I only look at it like once a year, or a couple times a year or something, and I hadn't been in a while, so I was kind of catching up. Okay, that's very red. That is not desaturated enough. How do I want to fix that? Some more Minotaur hide. And I was reading a thing about, I think it's called Queen Charlotte. Anyway, there's like a prequel to Bridgerton, which I don't know how many people watching this stream will have watched Bridgerton. But even if you haven't watched it, you may have seen promo pics. So it's a kind of alternate history take on the Regency period in a way. So the costumes are kind of over the top, and that's very intentional, and most people who critique costumes understand that that's what they were going for. But they were talking about the wigs because they've imagined Queen Charlotte as an African-American woman, and they wanted to go with natural hair texture. But they were saying it's very hard to light that color of hair, like really dark hair, which if you have dark hair, or you've had a pet that has dark hair, you may have had this experience. So there are places in the wigs where they've added some, golden browns and stuff, so that you can. It's basically the same reason we're adding highlights to miniatures, highlights and shadows, is so that you can see the shapes better. The way the lighting will bring out the shapes of the, because these are very elaborate hairstyles and stuff. So that is kind of what I'm going to do for a dark hair color, is I'm adding, golden brown highlights. And the reason I like that kind of yellow is it, probably more with the intense brown than it's doing here. It goes just a little bit pinkish, which I think has a nice effect. Is that exactly how it works in the real world? I'm trying to remember from before my hair went all white, and I don't necessarily remember, but I like the effect. I usually shade with walnut, which is the shadow in that triad. So I like all three of those colors together and individually for different purposes. But I didn't want to go like super dark on this guy, because I think the one hair color that I haven't really settled into, some color combos that I like are more medium brown colors. So I have some blonde versions I like. I have some redhead versions I like, depending on whether I'm going like, super redhead or slightly less. I do enjoy painting like super redhead, even if that too is not super realistic. But I never really cracked like a medium brown set of colors that I liked enough to, make note of it and use it repeatedly. Oh, speaking of realism, when I was in school, I'm not entirely sure, I have to think about what colors to use for this, but when I was in high school, there was a girl in my year who had her hair looked like copper wire, like it was that exact color of copper wire. It was really cool. So what were my stories? Um, well, one day last week, I we haven't been driving as much because my husband works from home now, but he had to go in for something, so I went to pick him up, and I think we'd driven the night before, so the sound was fresh in my mind. But you know, you have your car and you're used to the noises that it makes, and I'm like, the engine sounds different, so it wasn't like knocking or pinging or anything bad like that. Hold on, I was trying to make sure that I had the light in a good spot because I think I ended up knocking something when I was getting something else. If you didn't know this car, you would just say that just sounds like an engine, but it was like it had an extra engine-y sound or a deeper rumble or something like that. And I was like, oh, I don't know what that means because I know less than zero about cars. So I pick up my husband and I'm like, do you hear this too? Or am I like hallucinating or my tinnitus has gone a different way or something? And he's like, nope, I hear it too. And it wasn't constant. There would be certain things I would do driving where I would hear it more. And we started noticing that we're hearing it more when it was cold as well. The engine was cold. I mean, not the weather was cold. Is he staying in focus? So at first we were like, it's probably not anything. But we're the kind of people who would worry about something like that. So before very long, I'm like, I don't know. I think we should take it in and have them look. So we did, and we're like, well, all right, we're not too far out from when we're supposed to get the deck service, so we'll just do that at the same time. And so they couldn't find it, and the guy that was working with me came. He said, okay, so the guy that looked at this, all he does is diagnose cars. So the way he described it was kind of like this guy's the Dr. House of cars. He's just a diagnostician. And then when he finds the problem, he passes it on to someone else to do the treatment. So he didn't find anything. He's like, but what we'd like to do is keep it in overnight, and then when it's cold in the morning and the engine hasn't run for a while, he wants to try it in. So they did that. And then they had like a second guy who does car diagnosing have a listen. And the first guy did hear it for like a few seconds the first time he started the engine, and then they couldn't repeat it again. Enough to figure out what it was anyway. So they decided that it was not a problem, and I hope that they are correct because that is our one car, and we will need to drive it. I don't go on the highway a lot, but eventually it will happen. But then the service ended up being kind of expensive because it was the 120K one, and they're like, yeah, so you should do this, and they'll do this and that and the other thing. And it's the first time some of this will have been changed out since it left the factory, and it is an 18-year-old car. And we do want to get a new car, but we weren't quite there, so it's like, all right, I guess it's worth a little bit more to keep this one running so that we don't have to get one suddenly, as happened with our first car, which we had kind of picked out what we wanted. We just weren't completely there. We hadn't done any test driving or anything like that, but it was like, okay, car broke, please give us a new car. Well, not give. Nobody gives you a new car. Not even Oprah Winfrey. Although I think she does pay the taxes now when she does something like that. But that was funny the first time. So that was one exciting thing that happened last week. What else happened? So I've been having sinus problems because it's just so dry. So I might have my coughing thing come back. Hey, duck a flock of flame. And if I do, I will just have to take cough drops because they don't make the medicine for it anymore. So my apologies in advance if you hate the sound of someone taking cough drops. But then I had a few days where I was feeling just a little bit like, I'm not even sure I'd say dizzy. It's a little bit, which is not unusual. I've had a couple episodes of what they call visual migraines, and then this thing with the dizziness. And my allergist's point of view, and I think he is correct, is that it's sinus stuff. It's not some of the other stuff that can cause migraines and problems. So I'm like, well, I guess it's just, it's winter, it's dry. We're having a drought, although it did finally rain. And also, when you live in a wet place, a drought is when it hasn't rained for like 10 days or something. But then the next day I got up and it was like movie style vertigo. But only when I did certain things. So like when I sat up from sleeping, and then so if I lay down or got up, that was not great. But I had this vague memory of having read something about this thing that can happen in your ear, and there's simple physical things that physical therapists can do, or there's even like a home version. So I went to look that up to see if I was remembering correctly, and I was. There's a certain kind of vertigo that's pretty common, especially with those of us of a certain age. Hold on, I need a bigger brush than what I have, I think. He has a lot. It's a magnificent dwarfy beard. So the way I think they call it the vestibular system, the way you kind of keep track of where you are in space and don't feel vertigo and whatnot, and be accurate, is part of it's in your inner ear, part of it is your eyes, how your eyes are perceiving things around you, and then part of it is the way your brain interprets that information from these other areas. And the part in your ear that does this are like these fluid-filled tubes. So the one guy I was watching, they're these physical therapists on YouTube called Bob and Brad, and they're kind of hokey, but they explain things well, and they demonstrate the exercises for stuff well. So I often, kind of start with them if they have a thing on a topic and they'd had a specialist come in and talk about this some more. So she had one move that I do not remember the name of for a home version, because she's like 85% of the time when people have these problems, it's in the rear or the posterior little chamber with this fluid. So it's like the fluid moves around, and that's the information. Your brain uses that information to figure out where you are in space. And then there's another part of your ear that has like fine hairs with crystals to hear sounds. And sometimes the crystals can get knocked out, and they roll down into these fluid-filled chambers. So you got this crystal bouncing around, and it's sending incorrect information to your eyes and your brain, and that's why you feel messed up. And she actually said when you feel that spinning feeling, it's your eyes going. And after she said that, one of the times when it happened, I'm like, yeah, I can. It is my eyes. Like, you feel like it's the room spinning or whatever. But I was like, I can understand why she's saying that. So that's partly how they diagnose this problem. They'll move you in a certain position, and she said if they have the equipment, they put goggles on you that aren't for you to see things. They're to transmit what your eyes look like to a video screen so that they can see it better. And they can even tell you, okay, we can tell you're starting to feel their vertigo, and then when your eye stops, you're like, and now we can tell you that you're feeling better. So I'm like, all right, well, it's just rolling your head around. It's not. If this isn't what the problem is, I will probably not be making whatever the problem is worse. So I'm going to give this a shot. And it was not great. It made it worse in a way. But I'm like, but it did change things. So that lends credence to the idea that it could be these, crystals misbehaving. So I'm going to go look up the full, and that one I do remember the name of. It's Epley. The Epley maneuver. And do that. And it's a little bit more complicated because you got to move into 4 different positions in sequence. And it's basically like if you do one of those little puzzles where you're rolling the ball through, that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to roll the crystal through these 3 different fluid-filled tubes back to where it's supposed to be. And it was like, bam. Like I did it once. And I think I even got the last thing a little bit wrong. And then ideally you don't dip your head down or lean your head back for a while so that, the crystal kind of stays where you redirected it to and it settles back in. And I wasn't even able to do that. And it's still, I think like I might do it one more time. I've still been feeling a little but I think that's really just the sinus thing. And I just had the misfortune of having 2 problems at the same time. Or going back to normal. Because I think after a while, like if you have some other problems that in the ear, sometimes the treatment is to adapt to it. Like just get your brain to be okay with that. This is the new normal. This is the new information. Let's work with it. So you do exercises to retrain your brain instead of worrying about, when it's a thing they can't fix in the ears. If I understood what she was saying correctly. And let's bear in mind that I am not a doctor, and neither is Reaper. None of this is meant as medical suggestions. I very happily play Dr. Google, but it's not like I think everyone else should do that. I was just, originally I was like, all right, I'll wait and I'll call that PT office I was going to for my neck and see if they can fix this. It just got to bugging me so much that I was like, you know what, I'm just going to give it a shot. This is too annoying. And then I was like, and I don't know how I'm getting to this doctor's office because it's bad enough that I don't think I should drive. I did turn suddenly to the right or something. That would have not have been good. I'm trying to decide if I should have made the highlights just a little lower. But hair is kind of like metal in that where you see the shininess is partly based on where you are as well as where the light is. So there is some flexibility in the up or down part where it's not going to look, super wrong to somebody if you don't get it exactly correct. You do want to get the overall direction of the light the same on all the things you're painting. Or at least from the same side. It still blows my mind that Aaron Lovejoy will paint, the light coming from this direction on the front, and then he might paint it coming from this direction on the back. And he's right, you can't look at both sides at the same time unless you're looking at 2 photos side by side. But it still kind of blows my mind. Oop, I forgot to put some. She's got just a little bit of hair showing back here. And it'll be nice to separate that from the rolling pins. I do want to get some shadow back there. Get some shadow on the top of his eyebrows too, makes him look, intense. You better like this pie on Thanksgiving, is what I think that face is saying. Yes, sis, just the Epley maneuver, which It had 4 steps, so it was challenging for my little brain. I started with the one that just had 1 step. And that was like 2 people's names. But it also was kind of interesting to me that sometimes advances aren't fancy equipment or, operations or whatever. Like, those are great advances, and that, I'm glad that we have that kind of thing. But sometimes advances can be very simple things that people figure out because we improve our understanding of how the human body and brain work. And vertigo is like such a common problem that it's good to have some treatments for that. Especially if that's all it is, just crystals wandering off from wherever they're supposed to be. I like the way those little, if you look at it from the side, he's got a few little bits that stick up on that color sculpted. Zachariah M. Aaron is hilarious. It is simply 2 light sources. Make it the thank you Marie calendar pie. I think I will cook this like he actually succeeded, and then we'll all be extra hungry. But then it'll be close to dinner time, and we could go get pie maybe, or make pie, or wait until Thursday if there are people here who are celebrating and typically celebrate with pie. We have plans to spend the day with some friends. There's a local restaurant that makes smoked turkey, and they do like a take-home dinner thing with all the trimmings and stuff. So we're going to be eating that. They usually do it with like cheesecake though, which is not at all what you're supposed to eat in Thanksgiving, in my mind at least. Also, I didn't love the cheesecake they did, which is weird. It's not often I say I don't love cheesecake. So we have a frozen pie in case the pie needs are not sufficiently met on the day. Sorry, I just got kind of distracted by his very luxurious mustache. I want to go 2 nuts highlighting eyebrows. Eyebrows are usually a little bit darker than the person's head hair. So it's like I won't usually use the brightest highlight colors on eyebrows. Unless for some reason I've determined that it needs it. So I think it's just a little redder of a color than it would be if I had remembered that the intense brown is part of this recipe. But I don't think it's wildly different. And when I said the highlights are just a little pinkish, you can't really see it on the thing. It's more that you might notice on your palette and go, well, that's a weird color. Is that gonna look right? But because it's such a small area, it doesn't shift the color that much. It just looks like highlights that are a little livelier in color. This part just looks like it's too deep a ridge. I just want to lighten it up a little. But then I also don't want to take away all the darkness. So it's like, gotta get my brush in the nooks and crannies. Daka Flocka Flame. One of the most helpful things one of the women doing the tests on me told me was that vertigo was often caused by a bunch of factors coming together in a weird combination, and eventually it will go away and you'll probably never know why. Not helpful in terms of fixing stuff, but helpful mentally. Yes. It sometimes the mental component of dealing with something is the hardest part, at least. this is what I have been experiencing lately, because it's kind of a thing with chronic pain too, that because I was having all those back problems earlier in the year, like it was bad enough that I was not doing the show much and stuff because I couldn't sit, and I think I really did get in my head about it. So I started, reading up on that a little and watching some stuff on that, and there's like a few chronic pain specialists that I was listening to, or there's a guy who gave a TED talk about how one of the problems the opiate situation caused was this idea that you should be pain free. Like, that's maybe not the most helpful concept. Maybe you want to be like less in pain, or you want to feel functional, whatever, but giving people the bar that they should feel pain free is like sets high expectations, and maybe that is not the way to do it. But they were talking about how some of the therapies are with your brain, really, more than anything else. Like, there are people who get, I think it's called central sensitization syndrome. Basically, they just get to the point where everything hurts, and they're just like, just even light touch can hurt and stuff. And a lot of it is in their brain. And it's basically, it's the same idea as this, actually. When I tell you guys, like, move the brush. Don't move the brush, move the miniature, so that you're always making that same stroke and you're building the muscle memory. And, sports people practice the move over and over again to build that muscle memory and become more competent at it. I mean, I never really thought about it, but of course it's true. You can do that negatively. If you keep your brain going down the same track over and over again, you can create negative effects as well as positive effects. So you can be amplifying pain. And the people are like, this is not the it's all in your head thing that people use to dismiss it. This is that working with your brain can be as effective or more effective for some people as working with your body. So there's like acceptance, and it's ACT, acceptance and something training is one of the things people do. Mind, body, mindfulness can be helpful. And so I started trying to be like, you know what, I'm not going to worry that if I do this, I'm going to break myself and make it worse. Like, I'm going to do my therapy exercises. I'm going to try not to think about this all the time, not think it like this is ending my life and I'm never going to be able to do stuff that I like to do again, which honestly had been thoughts at a certain point that had been coming into my mind, because it's like, everything I like to do involves sitting down. If I can't do that, I mean, I guess I probably could canvas paint, but not little miniatures, that's for sure. And it helped a lot. I'm back to my regular, I'm old and I didn't take enough care of myself level of pain, instead of this kind of catastrophic thing. Now, I mean, the exercises are absolutely critical as well, but I needed the mental shift to be vigorous enough about the exercises, I think. And then I was able to graduate from physical therapy to, they trust me to do it at home on my own. I think it's been working pretty well. So I've even been trying to do mindfulness, which is an interesting challenge when you're, I have ADHD. Keeping my brain on one track is not my special talent, that's for sure. But I try. And I hope that it will actually help with focus and stuff at some point. All right, now I'm just getting too into the beard because I love painting. Luxurious hair. But I think we need to call the beard done and move on to some other parts of this guy. I need to give his eyebrows just a little wafer thin bit of highlights too. Make sure we, like, I love the way that one eyebrow is raised. When I was a kid, I spent time learning how to do, like, I practiced that. It took me a long time to learn to whistle. But now I can raise both my eyebrows independently at will. Well, now that he's down here, is that enough highlights? Maybe we do just a little smidgy more of highlights. Because hair is pretty shiny. You know, I mean, we gotta believe that this guy has some beard oil and stuff, right? He works in a shop with lots of raw ingredients to make oil. Not necessarily savory ingredients, but ingredients. I could go further, but I won't because we don't want to take the focus away from the all-important pie. Now, I feel like I need to do that inside shirt. I have zero notions of what color I want to paint that, so it's going to be very excitingly gray. Since it is such a tiny part of anything, it really doesn't matter that much. So for anyone who came in late, the yellow color that I was mixing in is Argot Gold Mare, which was from the Barrowgate box this year, and I believe there are still some. I almost had to order another one for our cat because that makes sense. But no, so after I took all the stuff out of it and was putting it away, it ended up on the dining room table. I think I was waiting for my husband to just take the stuff downstairs, recycling boxes downstairs. But anyway, Corbin decided that he loved this box. So it's like it's an empty box and he's a not small cat. So he sat down on it. Of course, the lid just goes, but he did not care. So we got a pillow and put it in there for a little more structural support. But then this became his favorite bed for months. Like he was just, that's where he would hang out. If he was in that part of the house, he wanted to go sit on the very stressed Barrowgate box. Since, you know, Reaper did not put a Corbin's weight worth of items in there because that would be a lot. Even if all the miniatures had been metal, I'm sure it wouldn't have been a Corbin weight worth of stuff in that box. So it was not rated for his bulk, shall we say. And a couple weeks ago, we were looking at it and we're like, okay, this box is now very dirty from when he goes outside and has dust and stuff. So it's bent and broken and messy, and I think we're going to have to throw out the box. And his little kitty heart was broken. And I was like, am I really going to have to get another Barrowgate box just so that you can be happy again? And then I think I was just browsing somewhere and I saw an ad for like a dog bed or something that had the nice orthopedic pillow or whatever on it, but it also had like little sides. So it was kind of like a plush box, just with low sides. I'm like, well, he is middle-aged and he does enjoy comfort now. So maybe he would be open to the idea of a plush box of comfort instead of an old ratty cardboard box of squishness. So yesterday we went to see The Marvels, which I really liked. I know nobody's going to see it, and people online I'm probably saying it's terrible, but I thought it was great. And not just because Goose is in it. Certainly does not hurt. Goose has some fun moments. But after that, we went out with some friends, and since it's actually like a rarely short movie, movies are so long these days, but it was like only an hour and a half. It was a little early to go to dinner, so they're like, well, let's go to TJ Maxx. They love TJ Maxx. And we're walking around, we get to the pet section, and they had beds like that, and I'm like, well, all right, let's get him one of these beds. And if he hates it, then we'll give it to some other cat, I guess. And at first we weren't sure. We put it up there, we showed it to him. He's like, whatever, I'm not interested. But then this morning, we walked in there, and he's sitting in his plush box that I'm sure is a dog bed and not even a cat bed, because they had like super big ones. I'm like, well, he doesn't need Great Dane size. He's not that prodigious. He does need not a little kitty curl up size. So Corbin is happy we went to the movie too, because now he has his comfy box. Because his other favorite bed is when he's hanging out with my husband. We put an orthopedic pillow, and then we have this like, it's like a little house type thing, but the house itself doesn't have a soft bottom. It's just a little piece of material, so it's like directly on the floor, and we're like, all right, he's older now. He might appreciate some additional comfort, and I guess he does, because he hangs out there a lot. But that's true. I don't think I've seen you since he had his good day. Zachariah, my cat, literally ran away from a plush bed I bought for her. It was super comfy and warm looking and feeling, but she would always walk around it like it was some giant attack fuzzball. Yeah, they're just so weird about stuff. And then there's certain fabrics, they're like, oh no, nope, will not touch this. Like, we have some things, if we put it on the bed, the cats are like, ah. Then they'll just walk on our pillows or something instead. So that's very motivational to not put those blankets on the bed. But Corbin had a very good day last week because he got a bird. We have a screened-in porch, and there are a couple of places where there are some holes in the screens. And very occasionally, I think this is the third time since we've had Corbin, a bird gets in there. And Corbin notices this right away. We don't always. And it usually does not go well for the bird. It took him longer this time. But it was kind of like the scene with Timber Toad in the D&D movie. So he was crashing all around his giant bulk, but he accomplished his goal. He hunted that bird. Then he wanted to bring it in the house, and we're like, no, buddy, you cannot bring dead things in our house. It's very much his dream, because he's like, well, food is supposed to go in the kitchen, right? So when he plays with my hair ties, he puts them in their food dishes, which is great fun for Ella. She's like, why is this here? This is stupid. I hate it. But it's like a little compulsion for him, so we don't try to change him. Just take the hair ties out. So Corbin's been having a good couple of weeks. What happens if I just put that yellow in there? Yeah, we'll deal with that. So this is the new sponge Game Envy. So this is, I got a purple lid one from their latest Kickstarter, and they made a thicker sponge. So this is that sponge, but then the other week I tried the new paper that they have, and I didn't love it. and I tried it again after the show, and I still didn't love it. But what I think it is if you are somebody who has your paint like this, you have the little drops and you pull the paint off and you like mix on your brush or what, you know, if I was going, I do that. I think that the little drops would stay at the correct hydration for a good amount of time. But I do this thing where I mix the pools, and those are bigger. There's more area open to evaporation. And I don't think those kinds of, what do they call them, membranes? They got some fancy words that they use now for the papers. I don't think they work as well with my style of painting. Which is fine. This is not really supposed to be how you're supposed to do it, the way with the little drops, I imagine. But I painted for so long, like in a similar way that Anne does, that I just adapted how I use a wet palette to me instead of adapting to the wet palette. And the kitchen parchment papers were fine the way I like to paint, so I just stick with those. I'll probably try it some more, but it was frustrating me just trying out too quickly. And then even it was so dry that even having the wet palette set up correctly and stuff, things were still drying a little quickly on me when I was working on my project, and I had something that I needed to paint the same color over and over and over again forever. So I just did my thing with the reverse wet palette. I kept that going for more than a week this time, I think. I don't think I want to go too light here because I really, that part of his arm is not an important part of the character here, so I don't want to draw too much attention here, so I'm not going to use contrast. When people talk about doing shadow highlight contrast, it doesn't mean that you have to use the same level of contrast all over the whole miniature. Ideally, you want to be using more where the material is, so hair is shiny, it should go pretty far from dark to light. Or areas that are more important should pop out of you more. Being too uniform and doing everything the same way is definitely something I've struggled with making myself not do. Kind of like when you try to paint a random texture and it's not that random because our brains resist the concept sometimes. This idea that color is uniform and the color of the face would be the same as the color of the shin or whatever. We convince ourselves of this, but it's not actually what happens in real life or what looks cool. And then this area is even more shadowed because of the pin, which I now must paint. What have I got for tan type colors? Which I'll probably end up using on several things. So most of the paints that I have are the ones from the learn to paint kits and expansions that I kind of default to if I'm not doing something particular. Yeah, I'll stick with these, I guess. To check if they are pie colory enough. So I'm going to use these same colors for the pie. Then I was trying to decide what to do for the pie plate, because they're often glass or ceramic, I think, right? Not metal necessarily. My friend has a pretty blue Pyrex pan plate that she will make us delicious pumpkin pie in sometimes. I do not think I want to attempt to paint a blue Pyrex pie plate. I think I'll do more of a opaque ceramic. Try to think of something I would have seen on the Antiques Roadshow, which for some reason I've been watching again lately. And then even watching like old ones, they redo the old ones or re-air the old ones, but then tell you what the price of whatever the thing is or the value of the thing now. And it's just a fun little game to try to guess, did it go up or did it go down? And a lot of things I always kind of think, okay, so maybe that sounds great on the surface, you know, that this dining room table is worth $10,000 or whatever, but it's like, okay, let's say that I wanted to commission somebody to make one now with the dovetail joints and this fancy wood and whatever thing. That's gonna cost a lot. And then, okay, so the table costs like $800 in 1920 or whatever it is your grandma told you. But how much did all the rent cost of your family keeping that table for 100 years? It stops seeming like such an awesome number when you think about those things. So it's like the costuming. I have zero interest in antiques. Generally, I like things to be new. But for some reason, I like to watch Antiques Roadshow. I miss watching the British one, because when I lived in Canada, we got both. And it was just, I don't know, it was an interesting contrast. Because sometimes the things would be like so much older on the UK one, because, you know, it's been there more. I'm looking for my phone, because I'm going to go. Zachariah I am. Yeah, that's why I'm selling a lot of miniatures. Too many and storage isn't cheap. Yeah, it's, we're trying to declutter. And we've been trying a long time. But in that time, I've kind of studied, you know, read up on some decluttering books and stuff. And there are psychological components to getting rid of things that are, well, that's, I don't remember who took it, but this is off one of those royalty-free sites. And so is, I think I like this one better. No, don't look up food, we're fine. But that is much warmer, I think, than the, yeah, we'll have to see what I do for pie crust, because that's definitely not the same color at all. You guys should keep that out and try it. But, like, we're really, there's the sunk cost fallacy, which is that, you know, this thing cost me $100. If I get rid of it, I'm losing $100. Well, not really. I mean, the $100 is gone. Like, whether you throw it out, give it away, or have it taking up space in your house for the rest of time, the $100 is gone. But what can you do about the space and getting that back? And that's worth something too. So your brain goes to the $100, but if you remind yourself, you can think more about the, oh right, but I'm getting something. Hey, Great Mouse here. I'm getting benefits that aren't financial, and you have to remind yourself of that, like less challenge looking for things. And more space to enjoy the things you have. But then the other one is loss is harder for us than, like, we notice losing something more than we notice gaining something. Gray Mouser, oh yeah, it's like playing poker. Once you put those chips in, they are gone. Yep. Or if you bid on an auction, like you never bid an amount that you're not willing to pay because that's what you just said you would pay. But I think the other test they did was something like they offered you could just have like $30, or you could flip a coin and you might get $10 or you might get $50 or something. And the vast majority of people will take the $30 because if they got 10, then they'd be losing something. Even though this is all money that you didn't have before somebody offered you the money in this test, this is like kind of how your brain works. So as much as you might enjoy acquiring things, it is more painful to you to lose those things, which is just interesting. Not having reddish brown is turning into a whole thing in my life today. So I guess I just keep having to make it up. Let's see, well, that's kind of a reddish brown. I think it needs more orange though. Because there's these, around the edge here where it's gotten all delicious and crystallized. It's richer than that though. Maybe I need to actually kind of start with orange. And then do something. And do blue, I think is actually what I need. Do the color complement thing. And then something I think a lot of people struggle with that there's like no perfect answer to other than just accepting this is how things work, I guess. Is they'll feel okay if they can give it away. That someone somewhere will be using this item. And I think people even give away things that aren't in very good condition to charities and stuff, which is not helpful because then they just have to spend time going through it and getting rid of it. And if you weren't going to fix the thing in 10 years or whatever, why are you imagining that somebody else is going to want to? Gray Mouser, I may not have the numbers right on the 10 and the 50 and the 30. Loss aversion, that's the name of that one. So if you want to go look up what the actual research was, instead of going by my sad memory of this research, it's loss aversion. That's what for, I think. I think that's better. But what I also need is like a darker version of this. I don't know how good I feel about just dumping purple in there, but you know what? It usually works. So let's do it. Let's color complement. Gray Mouser, I know I'm just saying this is a rational answer. Yes. We're irrational creatures is why we have to. It's so hard to get rid of this stuff. Part of it now that makes it hard is it's just tedious and boring and I don't want to do it. There's not really much way around that part. See, it's just magic. If you ever are like, I don't know how to shade this yellow, grab some purples. Because the original yellow is still in there. And then did I totally mix a color that I had pre-mixed? Yeah, probably. Let's find out. Nope, that's actually fairly different. It may not be dark enough. I do new. Polly Schlemazel. Am I planning anything special for my 100th episode? Are we close to my 100th episode? And then is it exact? Because I'm pretty sure the YouTube count is actually off, at least by one. But I keep not remembering to go through and check it against my little spreadsheet. So I keep a spreadsheet where I try to make a note on what I talked about, or the main topics, so I can go back and reference something if I have to, and then I forget to go back and reference it half the time. Dakaflaka Flame is vulnerable to saving money by buying minis in bulk. Yeah, my ex was super into Costco. And I'm like, yeah, you're going to go broke saving this much money. And it pains me to miss the deal sometimes. But, you know, we're a household of two. We cannot consume big bulk bunches of things before they go bad. So, very rarely. Do I buy big bunches of things, size things? We also do not have that kind of storage. I was bugging my husband the other day. I'm like, if you could just add 3 closets to this house, that'd be great. I'd be very happy then. I still do not understand. So our hallway closet, it's a split foyer, which is dumb in its own, but it's very disappointing to furniture delivery people too. So this is 99 allegedly. So the next one would be 100. Huh. I was not. I had like holiday plans. So I have some ideas of things. Well, at least an idea of something to do around Christmas. But if anyone has suggestions for something that would be cool to do for a 100th episode. I mean, I don't think it would be practical for me to try to paint with 100 different paints during an episode or something. Guess I could paint a really old character. Would that seem like an anniversary marking thing to do? Actually do one of the Learn to Paint kit guys on screen, since we're called Beyond the Kit. Or one of the ones from the quick paint sets. There's one of those squirrels. There's these squirrels that rustle around the leaves, and they sound like they're 75 pounds or something. They rustle the leaves to an unbelievable degree. They may be just doing this to torment Corbin, I'm not sure. He pines. He yearns to go out and get them. Got a chipmunk a while back. We try to save anything bigger than a field mouse, because he does not need to be killing things out in the yard. We're very grateful that he gets mice and stuff if they come in the house. He does not need to be rampaging over the local wildlife on his leash. He's still managing to do this. But that chipmunk, he actually ran away. My husband had to let the leash go, and he ran into the neighbor's yard to get this chipmunk. So by the time my husband met up with him again, it was too late for the chipmunk. And we were not able to rescue him that time. There was another time he texted me. He's like, "Can you come outside?" So it was like one of us had to distract him while the other one, got him to open his mouth and let the little chipmunk free. But you needed the distracting person, because one person could get him to drop the chipmunk, but then that person could not also get him to stop running after the chipmunk another time and picking it up again. So it was a 2-person job. Because we usually have no idea what he's going for. He just lies in wait until it's time to spring. And then, I think I meant to paint his shoes at the same time I painted his hair. Slayer Street. The beard is looking really nice. I think I made mine too bright, so it looks a little cartoony. I think these kind of dwarf sculpts, they have so much character, they can support a little cartoony. So I would probably have gone even more extreme if I were sitting painting and I had a bunch of time, but I got kind of obsessed with painting the beard, and I'm like, well, I don't think people want to watch that for 2 hours, so I need to move on. Quindy LaRue, the number of the titles should be correct. The count on the total of videos in the YouTube playlist is off because 1, Twitch ate a couple videos a couple years back, and 2, we've had connection problems a couple of times that have split the VODs into 2 parts. Yes, there are definitely some 2-part videos on there, and it is very sad that Twitch ate like the exact wrong video. It was like, Twitch. I waited and waited for those ones to come out because I had articles that was going to reference them. It was when I was doing the dry brush testing, I think. I was like, okay. Eat the ones that I really needed. But maybe someday I'll just, repaint the base coat on all those guys and do another dry brush test. We got a better camera now. And someday I may have an even better camera, but I don't know. I got excited. Logitech was advertising this camera that was supposed to kind of switch. It's really positionable, and you could switch between being a webcam and being like this or being straight down. And it seemed like you could adjust it really well and quickly. So that part was great. But then the part that I was like, is it's 1080p? And I don't think that. Like this one is 1080p. And this one, even though it's just a phone, works because you can set it to 4K. So I think because these guys are just so small that 1080p is not enough. And we can but hope that Logitech will make the same cool not handle, stand, I guess. The same cool, super adaptable stand. Either as a standalone thing or with a better camera. Because it'd be nice to have, sometimes you want to look at different parts, or, I could just move it down to have a closer look at the palette and then move it back to the miniature. That'd be cool. But alas. But someday I hope to figure out a stand and a system to use my fancy camera, is what I usually call it. I guess I actually do have a DSLR now. Usually I get something that's like close to a DSLR, but not all the way there. But they give you nice auto modes on DSLRs now. So, because if I'm taking pictures of anything other than miniatures, I'm happy letting the camera make a lot of decisions. I'm not happy letting the camera make a lot of decisions when it is a miniature, because it decides wrong. Very, very wrong. I guess to camera people, it's just so weird that we want all of this in focus. There's not some artfully blurry part. Is anyone watching Gilded Age? Which, honestly, if you need some color combo ideas, I went and looked up a bunch of the dresses from last season, because I was like, I'm going to make a little gallery of those just for color combo ideas, because it's just combinations I would not have thought of that are cool. But it seems like this season, it's almost like the Vaseline joke, where like the center of the camera is in focus, but all around the edges it's like super blurry in every shot. It's like, okay, I guess this is a stylistic decision you're making, but I'm entirely clear why. My favorite piece of trivia from that show is when they talk to the set designer. No, I don't. The guy who kind of does what the room looks like. And there was one scene where it's a real house from that time period that's set up as a museum and stuff. And they took paintings down. Because the Victorians were just the captains of clutter. And I relate. I relate to the Victorian clutter aesthetic. But they're like, it's too much. Like, and it doesn't look barren or anything. Like, there are still tons of pictures and stuff on the walls. It's just, to modern eyes, it would just seem like crazy and probably distract you from the action if they were accurate in the amount of Victorian clutter that was in the scene. Babatuk. I was looking for the gingerbread man, and I think that might have been one of the victims. Is that referencing something I missed above? Oh, the gingerbread man should be the video. That should be there, I think. The dry brush test is definitely a victim. The one of them is there, I think, but then the one with the wall. No, they might both have been lost. Well, everything gets deleted eventually off of Twitch, but the YouTube, there should be a playlist that has almost all of these, and it was early on. It was like it was in the first dozen or so that the two ones that didn't work, I think, happened. As far as I remember, everything's worked since then. On the playlist, it's missing. Well, that might be because the numbering is correct. But the gingerbread guy was last year, I think. No, not last year, the year before. So the gingerbread guy was later on. I don't have my little database, which is not numbered. It just has the date. And then I hate how YouTube does dates because it'll just say a year ago. And it's like, what if you said March 2021? Because that's how I think of when this video came out. That would be way more helpful than 2 years ago or a year ago or however YouTube does it. It's like, I hate you. Daka Flocka Flame thinks a really old character could be fun, especially if you painted one of them a long time ago. Oh, I did have something like that I was going to do. That's probably a good idea. I'll have to... 15 and 16 are the missing episodes, which were... If both the dry brushing episodes are gone, it was a guy with a blue cloak and a section of wall. What's missing? All right, I actually don't need to go nuts on that, but let's check his shoes. No, they look good now. I'll just quickly work up his shoes. Wander's Haven, hello, and Raiders. It's nice to have you join us. I'm working on this dwarf tub, the dwarf baker, with a pie because it's Thanksgiving in America this week, and pie may be my favorite part of Thanksgiving. I'm not necessarily. It's up there. I like the what I think of as the holy trinity of Thanksgiving dinners: mashed potatoes, stuffing, and cranberry sauce. I was vegetarian for a long time, so the turkey wasn't in there at the time. I do eat it now, though. I was just going to try to quickly mix up his shoes a little bit. It's not going to need a lot. Just want to not forget about them. I have this thing where I like to make the soles a different color than the uppers. But in the interest of time, I will resist that urge that I have. I don't want less of the red. For this, because that's way down at the feet. I don't really want the shoes to draw much attention away from the deliciousness of the pie. And I'm sure he has scuffed up shoes because he's working hard in the kitchen, not caring about that stuff. But I did remember that there is another Reaper character with a pie, which is Zonko? Was that? The Killer Clown. But that's like a cream pie, so it didn't seem very Thanksgiving-y. I guess I need to bug the sculptors to make a pumpkin pie, because this isn't pumpkin. It's apple or something, which is fine, but it's not pumpkin. But the last time we talked about this, people had some interesting things that they would have for traditional in their family Thanksgiving dessert. So what are you all looking forward to eating on this festive celebration of eating? Thanks, Wanderer Steven. We still need to do some work on the pie. It's not delicious enough. You gotta get that crust looking all baked and yummy. Little. They're not super scruffed, but they're also not super important. So I'm gonna make them look worn the other way instead of being super precise. I'm gonna make it kind of crummy looking, and then come back and cover some of that up and fade it in to hopefully look more organic. Alright. Back to the pie, I think, since the pie is the story. I was gonna do a whole thing with the pin, which I guess is also, you can't really have a pie without a pin, can you? Bonzo, the Killer Clown. Zachariah is going to have tacos and queso con carne, and my husband would probably prefer to have dinner at your house because he actually thinks turkey dinner is just super boring. Yes, Quindy has very kindly shared the links to these figures in the chat. Daka Flocka Flame. Pie is my favorite. I raised turkeys this year and I'm going to cook scalloped zucchini. Ooh, that sounds fancy. Fancy and delicious. So I should look at my pie reference some more, but I probably won't. All right, I will. And this is a royalty-free image, although I sadly did not note down the person's name, so I'm just going to try and put some of those crystallized bits in, which, yeah, now I'm getting hungry too. I think this will be more of the making it rough and then fixing it later approach. Really regret not having brought a Rusty Brown with me. But color is generally, we always worry about getting the color of something exactly right. Like you're trying to match, painting this animal, or you really love this color that you saw somebody do on another miniature, or a favorite piece of art or something, and we get really obsessed with making that color exactly right. And that's going to be the secret to it looking like hair or non-metallic metal or what we liked about the miniature or whatever thing. And color is actually the part you can shift the most on something and have people accept it in context. So if they haven't seen your reference, as long as the color is like plausibly the color of that thing, and you can kind of push that further than you would think too, the average viewer is going to be fine with it. It's the value, the lightness and darkness, and having shifts of light and dark, that is way more important to our perception of things being real or looking like whatever material. I mean, in this case, I might be wrong because I think that color is very weird and off. But as a general principle, this is the case. Like, I've had some 2D pieces of art where I've got very strange colors in there that you would probably not guess. And it doesn't look super weird in context. Or it looks weird, but it still looks realistic because, you know, getting the proportions right and the value and all that stuff is way more important than color. But we do tend to drive ourselves nuts trying to get colors exactly right, and we don't need to. We don't need to drive ourselves as nuts as we do. I have a blog article that's kind of about this, which I totally do not remember the name of. Color is not the secret recipe. Maybe it's just color is not the secret. I don't know. That's probably too little. As magical as Wendy is, I think I've given her too little information that time. I think maybe we need to get a slightly more baked section over here too. So as I'm fading it in, I think it's not too terrible. I don't know. We'll see if it looks crispy and delicious in the end. Okay, well that part looks terrible. Maybe this one. Yes, color matching is not the secret code to realism. Because I'm so good with the snappy titles. But it is 100% true. And people, like, it's not just miniature people that do this. When I take traditional art classes in watercolor or oil painting or whatever, people will be like, oh, I just can't mix this color from the picture. Or they'll, when they're watching an instructor do stuff, they're always like, oh, well, what color are you using for that? What color are you using? What paints did you use? How did you mix that? And it's like, okay, did you make a blue? You want blue. Did you make a blue that does the job? It doesn't have to be the exact blue from your photo. But when you look at your photo, pay attention to the parts of, okay, where is it darker? Where is it lighter? That is more important than getting the color exactly correct. All right, this pie has seen some things, I think. Sorry, I keep having to kind of tilt him sideways so that I can see the real shadows to figure out where the little, is it crimping? Is that what when you put the fork around the edge of the pie? I think you're crimping it. The little sticky up bits of the crimping are. Quindy is magic. Zachariah wants pie and ice cream now. We have a friend, and he feels like you have to have ice cream with pretty much every dessert. It's like, okay, no, it makes sense with pie. Maybe some cakes. But there are a lot of desserts that most people eat just fine with 0 ice cream. But it's like if you're inviting them over and there's some dessert, like either you better warn him you don't have ice cream, or you better go get some ice cream, or he'll be very tragic. Yeah, I got a bit too sloppy on this side, I think. I need a bit more of the red, and I just have the darker color. I hope I don't run out of this color. Because do I remember? Oh no, I just mixed that purple in. That's true. That was... Maybe it'll be good to do it again in case anyone missed the magic that is you can make the correct shade of color for any yellow if you find the right purple. I had this one 2D picture I did that was like a yellow decorative gourd or something. And it's all like browns and stuff, and I use 0 browns. You know, I was doing it with like these weird watercolor markers. And I'm like, so there's no brown in this, it's just purple and yellow mixed together. That is brown, but it's like you don't have to have brown, you have to have purple and yellow. So I made this yellowy color because I didn't have something that I felt looked enough like pie crust. And then I took this purple color here, which is, this one is Imperial Purple, but I would just experiment. If you make a mix that's yucky, just try a different purple. And if you mix the purple in, you get wonderful browns that match the yellow because they came from the yellow. Now we get some of the golden delicious-y part. I would think I would rather paint a pie than bake a pie. I remember once I was working on this. I mean, it wasn't really a diorama, but it had like a more elaborate scene setting than I would normally do. It had a lot of, like it had some vegetables and jars and pottery and stuff like that. And one of the things was like a bowl or something like that with some bread in it. And I had a little press mold for the bread. It was, I think their name was called Happy Seppuku. Sadly, the company has closed, and they did these base texture things, but they had a few that were like little accessories and stuff, and then this one had the bread and carrots. I don't know, I had some other stuff. Anyway, the little breads came out all right, but I had the bottom of the bread, and I'm like, I spent like just an inordinate amount of time painting the bottom of the bread so it looked like slightly charred and slightly had flour. Like, this was not the important part of the story. My efforts were to some degree misdirected, but I had fun with the bread. And now I'm taking the purple. It's not because I want this to be browner in the sense of I don't want it to be, I want to desaturate it. I think it got too yellowy. This is kind of a dark pastry. I think I'm going to have to lighten it up in a few spots. Expand the area of the more yellowy part. And that's the thing where I was talking about the values. It's like I guessed, and usually you go too light. In this case, I overcompensated. I mean, the pie is getting a lot of light. It's not going to be super dark. So I need some dark places where, you know, from baking. But I needed to lighten up the overall value of it. And that was way more about the proportion and how light or dark the colors were than is this mix exactly what my pie picture looks at that I haven't looked at again lately. And I won't. We'll look at it at the end. And I very much suspect that it won't be very much at all like the pie in my reference. But hopefully, if I don't completely mess it up, this will still look pie-like. Pie crusts are not super smooth and satiny looking, so I'm not trying to make fancy blending. Trying to have some random stroke stuff happening. Now let's do some of that lighter color and see if that works. Okay, I'm not doing it quite yet because I could see a shine still. And I may not want to hit every one of these. I want to decide the light, you know, is stronger from one direction, or some of these are, you know, that one's not very raised up compared to some of the others. I don't want to be too uniform. That's going to reflect the natural way that a pie would look. I think I might need to go just a little lighter. So how many people are going to go try to eat a pie real soon now? I made myself want a pie. But I think I'm getting weird cheesecake, so that's okay. Now I do need to start putting some water in, I think, because white is very opaque. I know it doesn't feel that way when you're trying to cover stuff up, but white is very opaque, and as you mix highlights with a light color or with white, you usually have to add some water or medium to keep the transparency at the correct level for layering and stuff like that. Even for painting textures, sometimes it can be just like a little too opaque if you don't add something to increase the or decrease the opacity. I guess you're not really trying to make it transparent, you're trying to make it not crazy opaque. We have a store on DoorDash that will deliver pie to us, and I fear that I may be taking advantage of that at the end of this show the more I look at this pie. That's looking pretty tasty to me. Just kind of want to get those edges a little bit, which for that I may need more opaque paint. So the value of your paint opacity depends a lot on what you're doing, which is why I don't always, people get very obsessed about opaque paint. Like, companies are trying to rip you off if paint isn't opaque because they don't put pigments in. It's like, well, a lot of pigments are transparent, so you can put as much in as you want. I mean, you can't, because there's a chemical reaction limitation. Like, it's not going to be paint that sticks to stuff if you put too much pigment in. But even if you put the maximum amount of pigment in, it's still only going to be semi-transparent at best. The fact that we like opaque or matte paint helps. Matting agent is kind of a bit of an opacifier. Because if you look at, where are they? So this, no, that's drawing retarder, which is very clear, but not what I'm trying to demonstrate. All right, maybe it's not going to be as obvious as I claim. What do I have? Need some kind of surface because you're not going to be able to see anything. I keep all my little blister packs. They're good for doing washes or when I'm doing my paint maintenance and stuff. So, all right, this is not making my point at all, but we'll see. Draw some out. All acrylic binder is a little cloudy when it is wet. But if we make sure there's some water on there, I'm just going to try painting it along the edge there, essentially. And then we'll do the same thing with the gloss. And you can't really tell, but if you put out a drop of gloss and a drop of matte and let them dry and look carefully at them, you will probably see that the matte isn't 100% transparent. because matting agent is little particles of stuff, so it changes the properties. Get around the edge a little bit here. Make a nice, delicious crust. The hard part of pie. Alright, I think I'm happy with that. Now we'll look at my reference picture and see whether my colors are remotely close. And not really. I'm much more tan, I think. I didn't end up getting that reddish color in there at all. But I think if you don't look at this picture, it looks fine. Thanks, Slayer Street. I was just noticing a place where there's like a rough looking line that a pie would not have. I don't know if I want to try putting that red back in there or not. Bet this is a mistake, but let's give it a shot. Maybe it's not quite orangey enough. That's probably okay. But now I feel I have to add it a few other places or it doesn't make a lot of sense. In theory, maybe around there a little bit, but no, I don't like that. Alright, I will call that good. Let's see where are we time-wise. Oh, I don't know. Don't know that I can get very far on the rolling pin, but we did the festive part. Because what was I going to do for the rolling pin? Let's see. We got that. Where are my more boring browns? Nope. Just trying to find something that goes with this greenier color. And I haven't, so I'll just mix something. This may not be an ideal color to try to paint textures on because it is a little transparent. So where the paint's being a little transparent was helpful on the pie because it let me kind of make soft textures and not really too much about blending and stuff. If I want things to actually show up, because we need a lighter color too. Then they need to be more opaque. So this is where you'll run into frustrations, is that just certain colors are by nature more transparent. And if you happen to want to paint a thing with those colors that is more opaque, you're going to be pretty irritated. But where I can use that to my advantage is this is very stark and not realistic looking. But I can take that original color and come back over it. in theory. Why my brush tip is not behaving very well. Back to that bigger one. I think has a nicer tip. Because part of the secret of this is trying to get the lines pretty narrow, which I have not entirely done. I don't know if that makes this opaque enough. So where is the actual white? Full strength opacity ahead. This was the Argot Gold Bear from the Variegate set, and part of the reason it does the nice thing with the hair color is because it's not a super opaque color, I think. So it's a lighter color, but not as opaque. Alright, I think I had too much water in my brush. Let's try again. Now I do still want to try to paint in a way that suggests the roundness, the cylindrical shape. So I've got to get it darker as it rolls away from the place where the light would fall most. So it's unfortunate that my brush kind of put the most dramatic dark lines where I don't want it to be especially dark. Try and fill in some less dramatic lines and see if that helps. Actually, just going to put the shadow coloring in a bit. It is not as important to have texture super crisp and detailed in shadow areas because we genuinely can't see it as well in shadow areas. The real trick is doing this and not getting it all over his thumbs and whatnot. forgot that you could see some of this handle too. But you can barely see it, so hopefully it's not going to be a big distraction if there isn't a ton of stuff on it. I also didn't really get here. Put a little bit in to fake it. Alright, now I'm going to get that original green, greeny brown. Thin it down a little. Carelessly not test it. And put it back over in hopes of kind of fading that green in a little, making it look more natural. Now this is one of those things you could go back and forth with a little bit if you so wished. Kind of going over almost, it thins out the lines that were too thick and hopefully starts making it look a little more realistic. It's subtle on the camera. It's a little more obvious in person. And this is one of those things where if I was like really hating it, I would probably tell myself to stop painting and come back and look at it in a few hours or even tomorrow, because I might be feeling like it looks worse than it does. And especially if I'd really been, taking my time, trying to do that texture really nicely, I could undo in moments what it had taken me some time to do, and then discover that I am wrong. And I think you'll be painting for a long time and you're starting to get tired and your eyes are starting to get tired and you're just too close to it. Sometimes the best answer is to just walk away and check again later when you've given your eyes a chance to reset and go from, painting mode to viewing mode. There you can see a little bit more, and I might need to go back over that again with that original color. I don't think it would have ended up being, I almost painted the pie and the pin with the same colors because I figured the texture would set it apart, and I think that probably would have worked. But having this be a little duller also keeps it more in the background and keeps more of the focus right here. So his bright nose and then the pie are going to hopefully keep attention there. And I did not end up deciding what to do about the dish. I'll have to ponder that. What kind of ceramic would seem like it fits, because I don't really want to add to my life complexity and paint that as a transparent glass pie plate. But I still didn't quite get there. I don't know, maybe I'll have to paint a little more in December, because Christmas is also a dessert holiday for most of us. Or whatever winter thing you might like to do. So that is Tub the Dwarf Baker is the figure if you're interested in grabbing one and celebrating pie. And then the other Reaper figure that has pie is Bonzo the Killer Clown, but that's more of a cream pie. It looks fancier than when they just put the, cream in a pan to hit people with pie in the face thing. But it looks like I guess you could do a key lime or some kind of pie like that. Yeah, he's a fun mini. So they're in the story of the Brinewind City of Pirates, there's a little food shop stall that's run by, it's all gnomes and dwarves and other more diminutive characters. So there's Nub, the butcher, he's lost a finger. I painted him, I think. And then there's Chop and Grub are the two halfling brothers who run the place. And I painted Chop and Grub and Nub, the web store photos, but I think Angela Imrie had painted this guy, so I didn't have a chance to paint him. So I was happy to get to do another one in the set. And then there's a mongrel man something that's part of that was in the story, works there as well, and I do not remember his name. It probably is something but I'm sure if you search UB, that would be a terrible plan. I don't know if you search Brinewind, if all the pirates and the other characters that are in the Brinewind setting come up. But anyway, hopefully you enjoyed getting hungry in today's session of Paint a Pie. So this suggests I probably shouldn't do too many more food painting miniatures, because then I have to wait until I cook dinner and stuff to eat. But thank you all for joining me. Actually, let me turn off this lamp. I'll come back to you. Thank you all for joining me. I hope you have a happy Thanksgiving if you're celebrating that. Reputedly, it might be the 100th episode of this show next week, so I'll see if I can come up with something for that. If you have a suggestion of something you'd like to see next week or any week, feel free to mail me privately if you don't feel comfortable in the comments. I'm sure we have a lot of lurkers, because I always see the number of views is bigger than the number of people who chatted, and that's why I'm a lurker type of person most of the time, so I get it. But don't feel like you can't still request something or have me talk about something, specifically painting, if you would like. You just have to let me know. Well, Grey Mouser, I started him on Canadian Thanksgiving, so I did like the skin and the shirt and the pants, I think. I painted on Canadian Thanksgiving, and I didn't get as far as I hoped, so I'm like, well, I'll just save him and try to finish him up on American Thanksgiving. So, and when I still didn't get as far as I hoped, so we need more pie holiday. I guess I missed Pie Day too, didn't I? But anyway, I will see you next week. I'm sure Quindy is going to find a raid for somewhere for us to go where we can enjoy other miniature related or crafty or artsy type things. We're going to go to Quantum Minis. So say hi and spread the Reaper love, and I'll see you next week for episode 100, I guess. Bye, everybody.